Smile, every hug, every kiss, every touch, every person in my life that I care about and love. But wait, maybe I'm getting too emotional. That's exactly what they say you ain't supposed to do. Suppress your feelings, never talk about your pain. Can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity, and make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste, the therapist. Let's go.
Okay, I'm frozen. Let's see if this is gonna work. The last couple of episodes, it's kind of started this way. I'm gonna wait till my internet comes back. Okay. All right, let me just see. Hold on. Frozen. I'm like really frozen right now. All right, we're back. Oh my gosh. Hi, beautiful people. If you are joining me for the first time, my name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. I come on, I talk to people that are doing things to empower the lives of. You can't hear me. Hold on, let me see. Let me just make sure I have the mic on. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, that's on. That's on. Speaker. Can you hear me now? Let me see. Can you hear me now? Now I can. Okay, good. Sorry about that. So I'm currently streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope. And I come on to talk to people who are doing things to empower other people's lives by thank you, by sharing their story. So I have been podcasting since 2018, but I've been going live doing the video podcasting since March of 2020. And it's been a crazy, amazing experience. The last couple episodes, my internet's been doing something crazy, so I think I'm going to have to get on the Ethernet. But I have a really special guest lined up for you, and I'm going to add him to the stream right now so he can introduce himself to you all. Hi, Adrian.
Hello, Celeste. How are you? Good evening.
Thank you so much for dealing with the technical stuff.
It happens. It happens.
It does in this virtual world. I think everybody's already experienced a lot of things so far. Now, can you introduce yourself to my audience?
Yes. My name is Adrian Carter. I am a leadership development and conflict resolution practitioner, an educator and trainer. I do corporate training. I also work with couples and relationships and interpersonal relationships, in addition to being a life coach and a relationship building coach. I'm also the author of the new book, Let's Get Married and Do Everything Except Make It Last, which specifically deals with leadership, conflict resolution in the space of relationships and love, and looking at our social construct and how we have gotten to where we are in our current society, and what that means for us as we're transitioning into these new ways of thinking about relationships with the way women are and the way men are. And I'm happy to be here. And I'm also an educator, spoken word poet, And I'm Jamaican, which means I have this license to be like 100 things and do them well.
I was about to ask you, what don't you do? Maybe I should have
Yeah.
started with what don't you do? Well, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you. So, before I kind of get into what you do, I really want to, someone says they love your book title. I'm going to ask about that, but we got to learn who Adrian is. So, tell me a little bit about where you are from and what your upbringing looked like.
Yeah. So originally from Jamaica, I came here when I was 7 years old, here being South Florida in Miami. And I went through grade school here, middle, high school, elementary, middle, and high. I graduated from Florida International University with my bachelor's, then went on to get my master's at Florida Atlantic University in leadership. And then I am currently actually at Nova Southeastern University here in South Florida. I'm what is considered all but dissertation. So I'm a PhD candidate. I've done all of my coursework, and I'm currently finishing up my dissertation to hopefully within the next, over the next 6 months, be conferred with my doctorate degree. And I'm studying conflict resolution studies.
So, so I'm frozen. Hold on. Can you hear me still?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, so I'm going to still talk since you can hear me because it's going to come back. But conflict resolution is a topic that anybody can utilize in regards to whether we're talking about conflict and great when we're younger and relationships, not just romantic relationships, but also friendships and social relationships. What made you decide to go after that topic, conflict resolution?
Well, I've been doing leadership development, and my master's is in leadership, and I'm now in the 20th year of progressively working in the space of leadership development. And I think that the heartbeat, the central or the nucleus of leadership is one's ability to resolve problems. Mm-hmm. And if a person can understand the ins and outs of conflict and how it's derived, and not everything is a conflict. We make things a conflict, but I differentiate between what is called a problem versus what is called a conflict. We're going to experience problems. How we address the problems is where we can potentially, is where conflict can potentially be birthed from. But for me purposely, in terms of my passion and where I want to go and how I want to help people, the ability to hone in on what the nucleus of leadership is where I think that I could be most effective with helping folks. So conflict resolution is paramount.
Okay, so something you said that I'm pretty sure people was like, oh, there's a difference, problem and conflict. So if I'm in a relationship and I feel like there's a conflict because I don't feel like I'm being treated right. Would you consider that a problem or a conflict if somebody doesn't feel like they're being treated right in the relationship? And they feel like there's this conflict happening because the other person doesn't understand.
Yeah, well, in the field of conflict resolution, different theories offer a number of different types of definitions. My very first book is titled, it's not my very first. My book prior to this one is titled Emerging as the right person in the right place at the right time. And that was a book that specifically dealt with leadership. And so specifically, I, as a researcher, as a theorist, I define conflict, and one working definition is, it's incompatible goals. But what I look at is that the world we live in, we're always going to be met with just goals, a difference of opinion. We're going to be met with, various perspectives. That's going to be normal. Even the idea of you not being treated the way you want versus how they think that you should be treated, that is a problem that needs to be fixed, right? So problem solving skills is right up under there next to conflict resolution skills. What happens though is when you now address the problem, and this is where it becomes paramount, right, to understand the difference. When you address the problem, a person's inability to address it effectively where it goes to from yelling and screaming, to misunderstanding, to not listening, to becoming disparaging. Now it's become a conflict. So the conflict is rooted in how we address the problem, not the problem itself.
Yeah, I agree. That makes sense. And I personally, I enjoy working with individuals. I used to work with couples and I struggled with that because it feels so complicated. What is
Mhm.
it about, what is it about you? What do you think it is that draws you to being that person that you're good with getting into the battleground and dealing with and helping people kind of resolve these kind of conflict issues they have?
Well, my first choice in terms of who I target is men, working with men. If and that's because I think the stories of men are overlooked, and I think men are undervalued. And I know that we have a whole world, especially when we talk to Black women, of also feeling overlooked and undervalued. But when you look at how people operate in a romantic relationship, that becomes of particular interest because a lot of that is based on hegemony, power, social norms, gender roles. It's a lot of that is based on constructs that are more socialized, not innate, that are more identity driven, not institutionalized, right? Because at least in corporate culture, there are some, each industry has regulations and rules, and you have budgets, and you have a lot of people, and it's a bureaucratic process that has a lot of red tape, right?
Mhm.
Even if you have access to the boss's office more freely than others, it's still an institution that is respected on the grounds of what it's for. But
Mhm.
when you talk about marriage and romantic relationships, it's a very wide open field
Mhm.
that is saturated with what your mom taught you versus what your dad taught you versus what you saw your uncles do. So you have these direct mentors in your life, and then you have these indirect mentors in your life. I call them these macro mentors because you're learning from popular television, you're learning from music and just pop culture in general. You're learning from something that you read in a book. Sometimes a TV show does more mentoring and shaping how a person thinks about relationships than even your own parents may have, right? There's
Mhm.
so many small cues and information that we're picking up all over the place, especially when we hear the stories of other people's relationships.
Mhm.
That is such a wide field of
Yep.
learning and
Yep.
teaching and exchanging.
Uh-huh.
It's saturated with conflict.
It is.
And so the only way to really, it's somebody has to be willing to go deep dive in and be able to help unwrap and deconstruct some of these situations and hopefully come to a solution.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you. The thing about everything that you said around all of these different things that kind of shape us, the unfortunate part of it is that people aren't even self-aware that it's happening. They don't understand that they're looking at this reality show or looking at somebody's Instagram post, and immediately they are
Mhm.
comparing their situation to what they've just seen.
Right, right.
So that leads us into your book, Let's Get Married and Do Everything Except Make It Last. It feels like a really, well, you know how you see whether it's a title or a picture and it draws you to the book? That
Mhm.
that name like drew me to like, oh wow, that's interesting because people are getting married, but they're not, it's not lasting.
Not making it last, right?
So tell me a little bit about your inspiration behind what made you decide to kind of come up with this book.
uh, I was in a marriage for 9 years, and it fell flat on its face. Um, and I was, you know, I mentioned that I also do spoken word poetry, and there's this amazing poet who I went to her program. I went to a spoken word event, and she performed a piece, and it said something to the effect of, "Let's get let's do everything except get married." And the her poem was a take on the idea of two single people living together, having a child together, sharing their life together. They're doing all of these things, but then his excuse, if you will, for certain things would be, but we're not married, right? So it was a very It's a very, very good poem. But so it impressed me so much. While married, I was like, I have my version of that poem, but from a marriage space. It's as if two people got married and was doing everything except making it last. And I first wrote a poem that was a that was my version of her poem. And I remember sharing the poem with someone and they were like, nah, that ain't it. I shared it with a young lady and she was like, nah, it sounds too perfect. You sound like that, 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 that. And I was like, you know what? And then the thought came to me, this needs to be a book. I need to be able to not just put these in small sentences of a poem, but to be able to elaborate on why this is the way that it is, right? And I was fortunate to have been getting divorced, being in my doctoral program, in the conflict resolution program, experiencing the world, talking to men and hearing so many stories that were similar. And my mind was just blown and open to a brand new world. And it really empowered me to say, and motivated me to say that this book needs to be written and to follow through with it.
That's awesome. And one of the things that you talk about in the book is that men are yearning for love, but because of the social constructs, they're not getting it. Whether maybe their partner doesn't realize they need it, but also I think men may not even have the language to express that that's what they need. What's your take on that? Because I'm all about ownership and taking ownership for where we are. And I think, especially growing up in America, men are told not to cry. But
Right.
men are human beings just as much as females are. What's your take on that idea about the men needing love?
I think the path you started down in terms of knowing the language to use was very well said. I think a huge part of our conflict or the resolution gap, right? Because we want to resolve the conflict. So the resolution gap, a lot of it is based on language. You may call it one thing, I may call it something else. We're having the same experience as women, but it just looks different, right? But when you really have a conversation, you filter it down, you'd be like, oh, well, you want or you need X, Y, and Z. Well, I want and need X, Y, and Z. It's almost like when sometimes they do packaging of a product. It's the same product, but they'll put it in a pink box for the women, and they may put it in a black and gray box for the man. It just to make it look to make it appear as if it has this gender identity because we're marketing to women or we're marketing to men. But when you look at the active ingredients, they're really the same thing, right? So I think that not speaking and being on the same language is what is a big part of what we're missing. And absolutely, men want the same thing women want. I used to find it astonishing. Now I accept it as being part of the path.
Sorry, what part did you find astonishing?
I used to find astonishing that women will say that they did not know that men want the same thing that women want. That men want to be loved, they want compassion, men want to feel, they want to feel vulnerable. They want the good feelings. They want trust and security. Because what we do is word association. Everybody needs everything that's in the pot, but we'll genderify these words and say, well, man needs to be respected. And then we'll genderify love. Oh, woman needs to be loved, as if they're not related to one another, right? And we put more emphasis on one for one gender and one for the other. But the reality is a woman wants to be respected, a man wants to be loved, right? So definitely we have, and that's why these conversations become important to help bridge that gap.
So if that's the case, right, and if these things are not happening, how can, like, let's say somebody's listening to this and they're feeling like a man is feeling drawn, and it's like, yeah, that's what I need, but I never had language. How does one communicate that, without kind of worrying about the social norms of
Mhm.
what society says you should be? How does that work? Like, how would you address that with a male that may be coming to you?
I think men at some point in reaching a space where they realize that they want more, but don't know how to communicate more. And I'll give you an example. I remember when I was married, being accused by my wife at the time, my ex-wife, of wanting sex all the time. And she made a claim that I was hypersexual. And we went to therapy. We did a couples therapy. And our therapist was like, no, he's not hypersexual. In fact, I remember the therapist asking me, well, how many times a week would you like to have that situation, happen? And I gave him the number, and he was like, actually, that's pretty low for someone your age, etc. And I remember also around that time, I went to a second therapist, and I remember that conversation came up. And again, they said, no, that's not being hypersexual. Do you do this? Do you do that? No, I don't do it. Well, no, that's not being hypersexual. I realized years later that I didn't know the words to communicate as to what I really wanted when I talked about wanting sex. It wasn't that for the act or the sake of sex. What I wanted to was to connect, right? I wanted to have a connect, and my love language is touch, and that doesn't mean sexual, for those who know love languages. But I wanted a place and an opportunity to connect, to be just in a space of passion and to explore that and those type of things, right? I wanted a softer, gentler experience when it came to that. But I never knew that word, right? Like throughout the marriage, I never knew to say, hey, I'm not looking for sex. I want to find a way to connect with you on a deeper level and to be able to, and to be able to be more passionate. I never knew the words. Like, oh, okay. And it was actually a woman who taught me that. When I had a conversation with her, she was able to take what I was saying and filter it and say, what you're saying is this. And I was like, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. In order for men to be able to start gaining those understandings, I think they're going to have to start having the conversations more and understanding that maybe I'm not saying exactly the way that I'm trying to, I don't know the words to say it. In addition to reading, studying, tuning into these type of platforms, there are so many conversations going on about relationships. Some very toxic, some very traumatic, right? But then so many of them are also very therapeutic and eye-opening, and they're vulnerable and they're transparent. That's why I told you before the show started, I said, listen, I'm an open book. You could ask me anything. I told you that, right? It doesn't matter. Nothing's off the table, because I think it's important to be open and transparent and vulnerable, because that's how others can understand where you're coming from and share with you in the experience.
Yeah, no, I love that a lot. And that example and your awakening. I mean, you happen to have somebody that was able to help give you language. Let's say that somebody's listening to this and maybe they have a partner who they're realizing that, you know what, this is probably what they're looking for. How does one address it with their partner? Because I think when it comes to relationships, even though it's somebody's responsibility. Like if you're struggling, I can't read your mind. You got to tell me that you're struggling. But I also believe that it's okay for me to kind of meet in the middle. I think sometimes people feel like, well, that's your problem. And if you got a problem, if you ain't saying nothing about it. But I think if I'm in a committed relationship, I feel like I owe myself also the opportunity to kind of ask some hard questions. How does one do that when maybe their partner doesn't speak as much or have as much language?
Yeah. Well, if your partner is able or is willing to go to therapy or to meet with a conflict coach like myself, bringing in a third party to help be the interpreter, right, is often necessary. It's like, when blood has coalesced on the skin, it's been going on for so long that sometimes it's hard to get a breakthrough. So oftentimes you might need that, oh, so what do you think she's saying when she says that? No, well, maybe she's saying, right? A lot of times the resolution is in the alternative story because we create these ideas about what something means. And quite often people are like unwilling to consider another story to be the outcome. Like, no, you did that because you're that kind of a person. Or it could be that they're dealing with their own issues, right? So that's where a third party can help to come in. I think another way that a person can begin to address the issue with their partner is by addressing the issue with themselves. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times, if we're not burning at our truest, most authentic self, and then you mix that batch of energy with your partner's energy, who's not burning at their most authentic self, it's combustible, right? You don't get this beautiful dance of light and energy. You get an explosion. Oftentimes, while it may seem like the other person is the problem, it's not that they don't have those problems or challenges that they're talking about. But the question is, how have you resolved your internal conflict around the problem? What is your attitude? What do you think of the other person? In what regard do you see the other person? What is your respect level for them? And where do you really have a love and concern for the betterment of them, right? And not just for your sake, but for their sake, but you have to center yourself first. When you approach the situation from a centered space, it does a lot for the energy of the room between the couple to help to resolve the conflict. So it's hard to resolve until you resolve it for yourself.
Yeah, that's good. And with you kind of being in the field for so many years, I think you'll appreciate my next question because, this comes up a lot. One of the, I wrote a book called Relationship Goals. And one of the chapters is, what do I bring to the table? And one of the things about what you just discussed is that a lot of times people's lens on their relationship is shaped off of their history, which is why it's hard for them to see another story. Can you talk a little bit about the dangers of having dialogue about your problem, isolating it for so long? Because I think that's when it becomes a problem. And so sometimes, if we're in a relationship and you do something to me, or I'm bothered by something, instead of me talking to you about it, I'm in my head about it. And so now we keep going, we keep moving forward. Everything you do is based off of my idea because I'm not kind of talking about this on my own. What do you have to say about that? Or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've learned that whenever I'm having a challenge or a problem, I first want to identify where am I in the space. And it goes back to what I was saying a moment ago. If you're looking to solve the problem by quote unquote fixing the other person, then the narrative or the story that you're going to create is going to be very one directional. Right now, the creed of a conflict resolution practitioner in our program, academic program, is physician, heal thyself. Now, physician does not mean medical doctor. In fact, in the olden days, before a physician was known as a medical doctor, the physician was just known as someone who was just a intellectual stature, your Plato's, your Homer, those very smart people. So the idea of physician being able to heal thyself is that a person must be able to address their issue first, right? And because if you can't fix you, but can fix everybody else, something's off. You're not a very good doctor. And that's why it's important to allow alternative stories, because it's so easy to get fixated on the person that actually does this. So I think it relatively remains the same, as an answer, that you have to be able to go to self, Otherwise, you will tell yourself a story that makes you the victim. And that's a whole nother story when it comes to me. I think we're in a world where a lot of people practice perpetual victimhood, because there is a level of power in being the victim that people gravitate to, because they're gravitating for some level of power. They're either going to get it on the one extreme, on I'm an overcomer, watch me roar, my life is great, everything is the best, even though it could be crumbling. Or they do it to the other extreme, which is, oh, woe is me, I'm the victim, look what this person did, while in reality they're just as much as the perpetrator in their own situation or in their own life. So that victimization part of it goes back to the story that people want to tell themselves, because they don't want to be honest in being transparent and check themselves first to see where they are in the problem.
Yes, I love that. And, I think sometimes some people refuse to even look at their role in situations. When I'm working with clients, no matter what they're bringing to the table with me, I'm consistently asking them, what's your role in it? How could you have done it different? Because I feel like if I say, well, Adrian keeps doing this and doing that, I'm putting all the power in your hands to keep treating me the way you treat me. But if I look at how I allow myself into your life, then I feel like things will start to look different. I'll start to feel like I have more power.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Now, that was like the love thing with the men, like that. I was drawn to that. Tell people a little bit about more what they can find in the book, Let's Get Married. And who is this book? Is this book for people that are in relationships or thinking about getting married? Who do you think the audience is for this book?
But the audience for this book is ideally, if you're 25 to 55, if you're thinking about getting married or have been married and divorced or are currently married, this book is for you. Especially if you have a Christian background, because what I do in the book is I talk about my personal story and the traumatic experience that it was, what my contribution was to it, and what I learned through that process. So I use my personal story, but that's just a foundational aspect of it. Then I use that foundation to springboard into a conversation about our social construct. So yeah, these things may have happened in my relationship, but where does this idea come from overall? Where does this idea of happy wife, happy life comes from, right? Who wears the pants in the relationship? And I really dig into what I see as the central problem in our construct. So this is not just an individual thing. I'm a social scientist, so I'm speaking from a group-oriented aspect of people. And the book talks about how the notion of provide and protect is the undoing of men, and how power, which you just talked about, having control, how power is more of what the game is about between men and women, using the weapon of provide and protect. Women use it against men, men use it against women as well. And how that becomes, when I talk about the intersection of the conflict, when I talk about economics, religion, our social structure, our political structure, and our psychological state of mind, those 5 things always work together. Okay, so think about society at large. We have laws in America, but if we talk about laws of abortion, that's based on religion and when life begins, right? But then because it's a law, we have a political aspect. Almost everything we do has a political nature to it. If we're conservative or liberal, what our thought is about something, how our relationship with money. So we're constantly dealing with a religious foundation, with economic and political implications, which therefore structures our social world and then has a direct impact on us psychologically. When those 5 things meet in the middle, conflict happens. And conflict happens at the intersection of them because they begin to cancel each other out. My political interests. I mean, look at our current state of affairs. And I'm not going to care what anybody has to say about their political affiliation or whatnot. But here's just the fact: you can have a political party that espouses a particular Christian value, but then their behavior politically does not align with that Christian value, right? But they'll scream that this is their Christian value. It doesn't make sense, right? But then economics is going to play a role in how money moves versus based on their political affiliation, which is undergirded by their moral system. And then look at how that behavior impacts society at large and how we begin to deal with each other and then feel about ourselves.
Yeah.
So all those things are going on at once. And people on a daily basis are trying to manage that. And then what they do is they take that construct and bring it right into their relationship.
Without even knowing it.
So what becomes the basis of all of that? It's this idea, what the engine that drives it is provide and protect. That marker of how individuals create their identity in society. Think about it. You as a woman, generally speaking, view manhood or masculinity through his ability to provide and protect. And then for heterosexual relationships, she says she has to have someone who provides and protects her. So that impacts how she sees herself for the purpose of security. Not feeling secure makes me now feel vulnerable, which means I'm victim. So then there is this idea of victimization when we talk about women. And if men have the money, then there's this idea of perpetrator around his being and identity. All of that is mashed up together. My book unmashes it, right? Takes it apart and shows you the different pieces of it, and shows you how this does not work. Our allegiance to what provide and protect means is our undoing, and we use the very Bible to do it. Because everything has a religious or moral foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And I go through in my book and I show you scriptures that people use to prop up this entire structure that I've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to show you that what if I told you that scripture doesn't even mean what we're typically told it means?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, people say, oh, the story of Adam and Eve is about is a man. First thing a man got to do is have a job, because the first thing God gave Adam was a job. You know, there are pastors who say that. What if I told you the story of Adam and Eve has nothing to do with gender roles? It has nothing to do with God made a man first and a woman's supposed to come from the rib. And what if I told you it has nothing to do with that? You see, so the book begins to propose to you alternative perspectives, but it's the solution, like I said, at earlier in the program, is found in the alternative story, because we've been told one narrative, which is what maintains or it fuels the conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So my book is looking to undo this conflict that we're faced with in our society. And so it moves from a personal story to a social conversation. And then it ends offering some solutions on how we can move forward.
So obviously the reader has to be open to looking at an alternative story,
Yeah.
I
mean, so far it's been great. I thought women were going to hang me by the nail. I thought I was going to be nailed to the cross, but you know what? In fact, both men and women, and this book is for both men and women, they have been superb with the responses and the feedback. The book is very transparent, very wide open, and women, they've honored the transparency and the vulnerability of the book. And I've had so many men reach out to me and say, this is my story. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm reading my life. That's happening. So please get a copy of the book. I think it's definitely more than worth it.
That it sounds like it is. And I think that one of the things that I've seen on social media lately, since you're okay with talking about anything, is that a lot of women have said they want to be protected, because one of the common themes in your book is the providing and protecting. What's your what's your take on that around? Because it feels, one thing I struggle with is when there's a broad label put on people, and especially with Black men. I've seen that where they'll see a story and then in the comments it'll be like, see, they don't protect us. They don't protect us. I don't know if you've seen that.
I've seen.
I'm curious about, what's your take on, because now, is that a problem or a conflict that's happening? It's this situation that I'm talking about. What would you call it? A problem or conflict? And
I think it's a conflict. I think it's conflict because we've definitely gotten to a space where there are a lot of incompatible goals, and it's in a lot of spaces it's hard to have the conversation. This is my belief about protection, and I'm speaking at a broad level, from a social level, to Black people specifically. One, going back to what we said about using different language, I think the definition of what protection is, as women see it, is different from how men see what protection is. That's number one. Women's and the definition of it from women being different from men is going to yield you two different results. Number two, I do think men protect women. Men protect who are closest to them. And I think women have a much broader context, they have a much broader social and political context for protection than men do. Men have a more personal attachment to what protection means. I'm going to protect what's mine. And there's so many counter stories to, well, if you see that this man and this woman is arguing and you should step in and say something. Right. Because then he turns on me and draws something on me and I don't know what's going on. So men protect what's theirs. The other thing about it too, what if when Black women are asking Black men to protect them, what if you're asking Black men to do something they cannot do, that Black men don't have it to give? I don't think we've ever really considered that. How about Black men don't feel protected, so how would they know how to protect you?
That's deep.
So I'm going to be a little critical of Black women, and because I'm going to eventually say it.
I'm just a host, guys. I'm just a host.
Even if it's not here somewhere. I think Black women have been sold this idea that they are the only victim all the time. And sometimes I get into these conversations, I'm like, ladies, you're not the only victim all the time. This idea that Black women are a double minority. You're both Black and you're both women, you're last on the totem pole. And I understand that. But I think what Black women don't do is they don't give enough grace to Black men to understand that Black men are also a double minority. And I'm not the only researcher who says this. I was elated to see others write about that. A Black man, in that he is a Black man in the space of being man, is also a double minority. Because he's inferior, he's considered inferior to the white man as man, and then he's considered inferior in race as being Black. As we said at the top of the program, how these things play out look differently for each gender, Black woman, Black man. So that's why it's hard to connect the dots, but we're having the same experience with different labels on them. Y'all got a pink and blue box. We got a black and gray one. It's supposed to look masculine, but when you look at what's going on, it's the same active ingredient. Black men do not feel protected. There is a world out there where they know that if they get pulled over by police, they're at the mercy of God. They know that if they walk into an interview with other men and other Black men, that and other white men or other races, we know what it's like There is always this air when you are the black man in the room of being the token person to be there. There's this air of that our life isn't valued. How about that? How about walking around as a black man? You know that on the list of things, our life is not valued. Now, if the black woman want to turn around and say to me, well, our life ain't valued either. We're the number one on the list and we number two on the list. Why are we arguing about being number one and number two most hated in America?
Dang.
You gonna argue with me about how bad you got it when my better than you is only one more quarter? That doesn't make sense to me. You got $1. White women got $8, $7. White men got 10. And you like, but the black man, okay, black man, you got $1.50. Well, we need $3 to get into the club. The entry fee is $3. So you can fuss at me about being a black man who doesn't do my part enough for you because you only have $1, being the only victim all the time, and totally overlook that I only have $1.50. Black women calculated as having more, black men calculated as having not much more. You make it seem like I got a whole $12 up in my pocket and I'm not sharing. I only have 50 cents more. Black women are like, no, but you got 50 cents more. And yeah, only. How about you stop trying to make me give you more than what I can give you, and you give me what you can and let me give you what I can. And guess what? That's $2.50. Now, maybe we could have a family and teach our children and have some generational wealth and get them to learn how to get the other 50. So that when we leave this earth, we can say to them, son, daughter, we gave you our $2.50. And we've shown you a pathway how to get $2. So by the time you take what we have and you move on with your family, now you got $4.50, you have enough to enter, and you have some excess to continue building. But that doesn't sound reasonable in a lot of ways, because this idea of provision and protection is a white created system, especially for westernized American black people who want to participate in a system that was not designed for you to ever play in. So you continue to hold the black man feet to the fire of a system that's not designed for him to be successful, and then tell me that you don't feel protected.
Dang, Adrian, I feel like I'm in church. Like I forgot I was on a show. I'm listening to you and I'm deep into this.
Well,
this is good.
Well, make it make sense.
Dang.
Make it make sense. So if we want to win, the only option we have as a people is to do it together. Even if we look at the economic disparity between us and white people and Asian people and otherwise, you can still see that white people in their game, they still do it together. So this, as long as we keep on trying to apply this, oh no, you're supposed to provide and protect for us, and hold a man's feet to that fire, we're going to continue to miss the boat. Do I think men can do better? Absolutely. Do I think women can do better? Absolutely. But the bottom line of what I'm saying is, or at least one of them, is that the reality is that both of us are just as guilty. Both of us are to blame. Both of us have been dealt a bag of sand, and it's nothing that's nutritious in it. And that's why I say they've simply just repackaged the same active ingredient and gave you a different color box and gave me a different color box. And so we think our experiences are different, but when you look inside of them, it's the same active ingredient. We are both being fed the BS. So if Black America wants to continue to operate out of white lens and look to aspire toward whiteness as its demarcation of success, we will continue to miss the boat.
That's facts. That's facts. I can tell you're super passionate about this. You've thought about this. I asked you if you heard about it, but clearly you have because you.
Yeah, it's the crux, because this is the part of the cornerstone of what the problem is. It's a cornerstone to it. You know, here we are, especially for Black men. Here we are in a new world in the 21st century where there are more opportunities that are there for Black women than it may appear that there are for Black men. Right. So we're experiencing the shift. Someone said to me, what can we do to help get Black men out to vote? Black men, you know, all of the pre-polling, all of the data that looks like Black men are not interested in the race. And sure enough, even during the race voting, you saw that more Black men voted even for the Republican than they did before, and ... And I said to them, when they were asking me these questions, I said, you know what? I don't see anything politically that is marketed toward Black men. Now, they ran down how healthcare is going to impact Black men, the criminal justice system, and what this can do, what that can do. I get it. But you definitely have this is a women's program, Black women, fund or grant. You don't have a Black man fund or grant. And I'm not saying that we need to go have a Black man funding grant. I just want people to understand the lay of the land. So you have a world that is becoming slightly, it's being pushed toward being a more matriarchal society. It's a very strong feminine push for that. And fine. But I'm here to tell you, matriarchy is not going to be better than patriarchy. I can tell you that as a fact. It's just going to be women's opportunity to have power. But I study power. Power operates in some very fundamental ways. All that's going to be done is in a matriarchal society, it's going to be women's opportunity to now wield power. And unless a person has character, power is going to be divisive. It's going to be hungry. It's going to seek capital. It's going to seek more power. That's what power does. It doesn't matter if it's a woman or a man. Nobody's going to do it better. If you put a Black person in office, that doesn't guarantee you that they're going to be a better political official because they're Black as opposed to being white. Because once they see power and opportunity, people without character are going to go for it. But what I'm simply saying is that men are faced with a backlash from Black women because they're simply men, and they hold men's feet to the fire when this whole construct was not even built to even support us. But women have this idea that simply because we're men, we have these male privileges. And I understand that, but women have their women privileges as well. Again, when you look at it, you realize, you know what? Both of these containers got the same things going on in them. They just different packages. How about we stop taking these pills and start working together and recreate our own new narrative?
That's good. I love that a lot. That's a perspective I've never thought about. I just knew I didn't like the blanketness of the statement, but I never thought about where it stems from. And trying to create a system or looking at a lens of your life in a system from a system that was never designed for you, you're going to miss the mark all the time. And I think that people listening to this will really gain some value in being able to kind of shift the way they think around this idea. So that was really good. So the book, the book is on Amazon, right?
Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble. Ebook is available on Barnes & Noble and other places as well. Anywhere books are available. Okay. And please leave your reviews. I have to ask my publisher. You got to ask for reviews. Please leave a review on Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble, and also on Goodreads.com.
Good. So make sure you guys get the book. It sounds like a powerful journey. Just like I can sit here and listen to you speak all day. Yeah, you're really good. And speaking of speaking, you have an empowerment conference that you typically do. Tell people a little bit about that and where that came from.
Yeah. Moving into our third year, the EmpowerMEN Conference. And so it's the word empowerment, but without the T. The EmpowerMEN Conference is for men to look at leadership, economic development, community activism, and conflict resolution, and lastly, the identity of men in the 21st century. I do believe that women, Black women especially, are experiencing tremendous momentum, upward mobility. I am extremely happy for the progress, the spaces that our Black women are in. I really am. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. I I wrote in a post one time, listen, I'm not voting for Biden. I'm not voting for the white man, whether it's Trump or Biden. I'm voting for the Black sister. I'm voting for Kamala. And we can say whatever you want. To me, it was about our opportunity for us to break glass ceilings and to continue to push the excellence of Black people forward. I fundamentally believe that. While I see that happening, though, I see an opportunity for men to also have opportunities to grow. There are a lot of empowerment programs that women do, especially Black women. And they got empowerment breakfast, lunches, meeting at 2, empower her, she power, we power, hear me roar, hear me meow.
We get it. Golly, we got a lot going on.
Yo, but I'm listen, I overdo it for a purpose. I mean, there is a program going on for every day of the week, but you don't see that happening for men. So while women have taken advantage of the opportunity to empower themselves, no one has said that you can't do it also. And so I think men need to do it as a way for them to stay on pace with women. It helps with the being equally yoked, right? You done got out and built yourself up, and you're more worldly and understanding, and you're manifesting, and you're doing all of this stuff, and
don't do us like that, Adrian.
No. I'm serious though. You are doing a lot, but we just over here just working.
Right? We don't. Maybe men don't really, because I think a lot of times when it comes to vulnerability, men struggle with being vulnerable. I always just use this example. I have a 9 and an 8-year-old. My son is 9. My daughter's 8. They're around the same age. They both fall down, scrape their knee the exact same way. People, if they're both crying, people will ask them, why is he crying? But will not ask her. They'll give her a hug. Right. So this kind of conditioning kind of starts at a young age. And so as you grow, as you become older and a man, I think it's hard to really break that down and say, like, I want to attend an empowerment brunch. I think that's great, but I think that's the reason why you don't see it a lot. So when you have people like you don't even see it even happening. I mean, the idea for man saying to even do that is not even like happening. Mm-hmm. So we embarked on this particular journey to give men a space to begin to break those walls down, to be vulnerable. In our upcoming conference, which is going to be March 5th through the 7th, the first workshop that we're doing is called Setting the Tone, Strategies for Effective Communication, right? Nice. Because I've heard so much feedback about how men need to learn to communicate, leaders learn to communicate. But we're going to talk about communication strategies and how to be more open and increase our vocabulary to be more communicative and to emote more. And that's what the conference is about, is redefining the role of men in the 21st century. And by that, I mean having a man that is more self-actualized, right? Not just one who is simply a provider and a protector. I actually think that is the lowest form of being a man. Right? Because you could just go to work and come back. But the man who is able to have vision, strategy, leadership, and to be thoughtful, effective communication, emotional intelligence, emotionally vulnerable and available, that is the man I think that's needed for the 21st century to be able to provide the type of leadership and economic development and community activism as we live out this century. We'll see what happened in the year 3000. Yeah, I love that. That's good. And I think that being able to utilize all of those skill sets you just said, men will no longer live on autopilot and just kind of go to work and come home and just kind of look at that as the only thing that they're supposed to do, and actually get more involved. So I think that's good.
Absolutely.
This was really good conversation. Really, really good. I think that what you do, like one of my taglines is, I'm here to help people shift the way they think. you clearly are somebody that really helps people shift their thought process. And it's not about trying to change people, but to help them kind of see it from a different lens. And I think that's amazing. If people wanted to reach you or work with you, how would they be able to do that?
Definitely reach out to me on my website, adriancarterspeaks.com. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, Clubhouse.
How do you like Clubhouse? I haven't gotten on yet, but everybody's on it. How do you like Clubhouse?
You'll love it. You'll love it. Do you have an iPhone?
I have an iPhone, yes.
Yeah. So you'll love it. I have one invitation that's hanging out in my phone.
I can get it.
You can have it. So,
okay, cool.
I could give that to you. The Adrian Carter Speaks is my Facebook, my Instagram. And if you just look up my name on Clubhouse, Adrian Carter, you'll see it come up. It's Dr. Carter Speaks on Clubhouse. Clubhouse is great. It's this conversation. It's a conversation like this being held by hundreds of people. Wow. Right, in different rooms, getting different impact. People from across the pond, England, Africa are part of the conversation.
Nice.
It is very phenomenal. Of course, in any social setting, you're going to have the ratchet. So the ratchet things go on too, and then the ratchet things be popping. So you go.
But it's just audio, right? You can't see. It's just
audio. It's just audio. And what's really nice about that is. And this is what other people say about it, and I agree. It removes. See, Instagram is visual.
Yep.
So your looks could get you, right, some access. Facebook, it works. It doesn't. Facebook's here or there and whatnot. The thing about Clubhouse is you're speaking, and so it's a very content-driven platform. You have to know what you're talking about, and you have to bring substance to the table, and people are very hungry for content and information, and you're making connections. And I've connected to this person who's in LA, and this person's over here, and it also connects back to your Instagram. So people communicate through Instagram if you like the person and what they have to offer. But it's really dope in that sense because it's no fluff, right?
Got it.
If you don't know what you're talking about, that quickly bears out. Quickly, right? But in Instagram, she could not know what she's talking about, or he could not know what he's talking about. But they shirt off, right? They batting their eyes, or they got the little sparkly things flying around them while they talking, and you ain't paying attention to what they're saying. You're paying attention to what they're saying.
Oh, that's dope. All right, I'm gonna have to get that invite and go on and see what's popping. I'm gonna have to check you out over there. And for my listeners listening to this on the audio, you can find all the links to everything he just talked about in the show notes. Mr. Adrian Carter, Dr. Carter, congrats on everything. That's awesome. That PhD journey is no joke. So definitely, congratulations. And you're an amazing person, amazing speaker, and I really appreciate you for being here.
And I appreciate you for the opportunity, Celeste. I really do. I'm always grateful for anyone to allow me on their platform. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right. I hope you have a good night.
You too.
That was awesome. So that was Adrian Carter. Make sure if you guys want to connect with him, he is literally everywhere in Clubhouse. And I know a lot of people are in Clubhouse. I guess I'm late to the game. I'm usually first to the game, but I'm very late to the game because I think I'm the only person that doesn't have a Clubhouse account right now. So I appreciate you guys for being here. If you are new to this platform, these episodes are actually a podcast that you can find streaming on all podcasting platforms. We're currently streaming in over 130 countries. And I am just so grateful for people like Adrian that agrees to come on and kind of share their story with me and with you all. If you want to be a guest on the show or have a show idea, you can always email me info@celestetherapist.com. And if you want to follow me, you can follow me on all social media platforms @celestetherapist.com. And until next time, I will talk to you later.
Smile, every hug, every kiss, every touch, every person in my life that I care about and love. But wait, maybe I'm getting too emotional. That's exactly what they say you ain't supposed to do. Suppress your feelings, never talk about your pain. Can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy.